Hello, everybody. Today we're going to be working on completing some of the tasks that are included in the HTML2 basics assignment in Unit 2. During last week's session, I didn't have enough time to cover all of the tags, so I'm recording this video to kind of cover the ones that we didn't hit that are described in the assignment. Now, those of you that may have done this before probably wouldn't have a problem picking up those additional tags, but I did want to demonstrate the ones that we didn't cover during the class session. That would include the block quote, the phrase elements, using non-breaking spaces, using an email link, and also doing a link back to the top of your page. When I complete working through those tags, what I'm going to do is I'm going to also do a little demo on how to use the W3 Schools validation feature so that you guys have an example to work from, although my archive videos have that as well. So let's first look at the block quote. Now, if you remember, last week we were basically building this Green Bay Packers page, right? Very primitive at this point, but getting our feet underneath us doing HTML basics, right? When we were putting this code together, and you can see the code is open in the window right behind the browser here, I put together these three paragraphs. And the paragraphs are kind of what we consider normal text in an HTML document. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of those paragraphs and convert them or convert it into a block quote tag, which is very, very simple to do. To understand what a block quote is, a block quote is something that we use when we write regular documents. So like if you were writing a paper for English and you had a quotation from somebody, for example, if the quotation was like, Joe said, quote, blah, 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 Packers are great, unquote, right? And it's a short phrase that you can leave right in the paragraph. But when a quote is really long, like, and generally in a paper, we think of it as being 4 lines or more, complete across the page, your quote is that long, then you should switch it to a block quote, which is basically to separate it from the other text and then indent it from the left and right, basically narrowing up the text. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to target this middle paragraph here and do the conversion. So that middle paragraph is right here. And what I'm going to do, and this is kind of interesting, by the way, you'll notice that I'm putting extra white space, basically, or extra blank lines in between my paragraphs here. And I want to show you a very kind of unique thing about HTML. I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to go back to the browser and refresh. And I want you to notice nothing changed. And it's not that the browser didn't actually refresh. Those extra spaces are in the code, the ones that I just added. So the first lesson here is basically that the space created on a page in the code is not reflected in the browser. So functionally, I could come in here and I could put in like 20 carriage returns, right? Save it, go back to the browser and refresh. And what you're going to notice is, yeah, I'm refreshing right now. It is not adding that space. And if you're doubting me, let's look at the source code. There's that extra space. So it's there, but the browser basically only reads the tags and the stuff inside them. So if I wanted to create that visual space there, I would do it a different way, which I'm going to show you in a little bit. You will notice, though, that some elements, right, like a paragraph, does have some space above or below it in the browser, but that's part of the styling of a paragraph. And the same is true with the headers and all that stuff. All right, let's convert this paragraph so you can see the block quote effect. I'm going to get rid of some of this extra stuff here. Not all of it, but some of it. And then I'm going to take this middle paragraph, and just to give me a little more text to work with, I'm first going to just copy it and just paste the text, a couple times, basically, longer paragraph. Then I'm going to convert the paragraph tags to the block quote tag. And then don't forget to change the closing paragraph tag that matches. And you'll see it's a very simple change. It doesn't change the words at all. I'm going to save this. Now let's go back and take a look. So I'm going to refresh the browser again. And I want you to notice how it narrowed it up. Now, this isn't a significant difference, but this is a block quote. Some people do like to use these when you are doing block quote-like activities, but some people use them for formatting too. But that is how you do a block quote. Very, very simple. So it's kind of like a paragraph. It's just indented. All right, let's move on to the next tags that we're talking about here, which are the inline phrase elements. And the first thing I'm going to say about inline phrase elements are that I'm giving you just a tiny, tiny little sampling of some. There are many and many of these that can be used basically when we say inline, which means inside a block of text, usually in a paragraph or another text structure, like a block quote. So the three that I'm going to demonstrate here are mark, sub, and soup. Yeah, and that's not how you formally say that, sup, I guess. But basically, mark is like a highlight, sub creates a subscript, and sup creates a superscript. And I'll show you what those look like. So let's just do that really carefully here. I'm going to come into my text and I'm looking for some words to do this with. How about let's take the word professional and put the mark tag around it. I'm going to take the closing tag and put it at the back end of the word professional. So here's what the mark tag does. Let's go to the browser and look. And this is really kind of interesting. Yeah, it makes the background of the text look like it got a highlighter on it. All right. You may or may not like that. It's not really visually appealing in this context. I'm just showing you how to do it. So if you could demonstrate that you know how to do it, that would be appreciated, especially if you want to earn your grade. Let's now try adding a subscript or like a little footnote. So I'm going to find, maybe I'll put one right after the word NFL in the first paragraph. So what I'm going to do here is right after NFL, I'm going to type sub, and then I'm going to put in a number, like it's a footnote number, right? Like look at the footnote at the bottom of the page or something like that. And then I'm just typing the number one in there. Okay. Control S to save, back to the browser, refresh, and then if you zoom in here, it'll be a little easier to see. You see how that one is basically the same number. It's a little bit smaller and lowered a little bit on the height, right? So in other words, it's dropped down below the normal bottom of the text, but it indicates a footnote, right? And what a lot of people do with these, by the way, is that if it is really truly a footnote, they add a link to it, and then you can go to the place where the footnote is and read it. Right? Not worried about that at this point. Let's demonstrate the super thing, and maybe I'll put that here at the end of the block quote to show you that it does work inside those structures. And I'm just going to do SUP, and let's put in, I don't know, number 10, something like that. Once again, I'm going to save, back to the browser, and refresh, and there's an example of that. Do notice that, be careful how you use this one, because you notice like the spacing of the lines here. By moving that number up, it does change the spacing of the lines, so that's something we can control later, but just be mindful. All right, so that's an example of the three phrase elements I require for the assignment. There are, like I said, there are others that you can employ that do lots of different weird little things. But for now, let's just play with this. Let's get to this interesting little feature here where it says an empty space using a non-breaking space. And this is really kind of weird, but what you can do, and I'm just kind of giving you a tip on this, is you can kind of copy this right from here if you wish, and not the parentheses, just the ampersand, the NVSP semicolon, or your IDE technically should help you type that if you have a decent one. All right, but I will show you how this works. This is kind of weird, but when I create an HTML document, like just the same way when I was adding all these carriage returns and I was saving it and going to the browser and refreshing and that stuff wasn't there, HTML also has this really quirky feature where they also have that same aspect with spaces inside of a paragraph or text structure. So for example, if I wanted to add, let's go to the third paragraph here. If I wanted to add extra spaces in front of the word Packers here, and I'm going to zoom in just a tad so you can see it better. Like if I wanted to add some extra spaces here, so I'm just going to type a bunch in, whatever. I want to make a dramatic effect, right, with the text. Now I go to save this. Same thing with the carriage returns. They don't stick, right? So when I refresh the Green Bay Packer page, watch this spot right here. Here's the refresh, right? Don't believe that I'm refreshing. I'll refresh again. And notice those spaces are not transmitting to the screen. So what that's telling you is that the spaces that I'm manually typing in here, only one of all the spaces I typed in landed in that spot. So if you type more than one space inside of a text structure in HTML, only one space renders. So if you want more spaces for some reason, you have to force them in using that tag that I'm pointing out here, which is the non-breaking space. So I'm going to go into this spot here and notice I'm going to get rid of all that extra spaces. One space is okay, it'll read that. But I want to add additional spaces. So I'm going to go ampersand NBSP. And notice how it auto suggests here. I'm just going to take it. So that's going to add one extra space. Yeah, I have to type 6 characters to get one extra space, but this is the only way to force it in. Now, what's interesting about this is if I want like more than one extra space, I can copy that and then paste it in. Yeah, not there. Sorry. Up here. So let's do a few of them like that. Now we'll save it. We'll go back to the browser. We can get there. There we go. And now we'll refresh again. Now watch Packers right here. Now you can see the extra spaces. All right. Now what's kind of interesting about this is why do they have this like weird thing? They do have this very weird feature in HTML where aside from all the upper and lower case characters on the keyboard and your numbers and all the special characters above them, your font set is capable of producing a lot of other different types of characters. For example, like we can get a dollar sign on an American keyboard, but if I was over in Europe and wanted a euro sign, well, that one's not accessible from an American keyboard. You need a special code. And so basically, whenever you see this kind of thing in HTML, you're invoking a special code to pull a character that doesn't normally happen on the keyboard. Now, this is a space, so it's kind of a weird one, but knowing that HTML only renders the first one, the only way to force them in is with the special character code. There is a whole table of special character codes that you should use for certain situations, especially for weird, characters or language features typically, right? Or money designations, math formulas. And we can kind of review those later on in the course. But what I would recommend to you that if you're looking that stuff up, and I think they just say special character codes. And there is a whole table or listing of these that are available. So the basic point is there is a significant number of special characters that you can invoke. So for example, like if you want to add a copyright symbol to your page, use this code, right? And you notice how some of them will have both a numeric code and a verbal code as well. So if I wanted to add a copyright symbol to my page, and copy semicolon is how you do it. And then you can scroll through this table and see some of the stuff that they have. And this is a very abbreviated list. There is a chart with this stuff, if you look it up, that has hundreds and hundreds of different special characters that you can add to your code if you wish. Not very hard to do, but that's not really our focus here. The only one that we're worried about right now is the non-breaking space for HTML code. Moving on to the next little thing that we're going to work on, and that is to create a link to send an email. So what I'm going to do here is way at the bottom, let's just do that right below the Google link here. I'm going to use an anchor tag again, so that starts with the letter A, and I am going to put in an href to give us a link structure. And then notice how it must be like either listening to me, which is kind of scary, and I'm trying to type an equal sign here. But there is this special link approach that you can use, which is called mail to, and you'll notice it's suggesting a fictitious email address. I'm just going to go with it for now. And then it will create a link. Now, what's interesting about this, and I'm going to save and put this up on the screen, is this will add a hot link on your page, right, where you can trigger email. Now, some words of warning about this. This is actually kind of cool and also kind of discouraged at the same time. You'll notice that it brings up my email client directly. Okay, that's great, but this is the one that's built into Windows, and I really pretty much never use it. So that can happen on your user system. So if there's a default email program configured and it's not the one they normally use, that's going to drop them into the program that's automatically configured. Some people do configure their systems to go right to Gmail or Yahoo or whatever, and that's kind of on the user. What I suggest is if you do use these mail to links, which are kind of cool, is that for the link, you might want to also actually type out the email address so that they can at least see what it is, and if need be, copy it. Now, people that are in the know, of course, typically understand that you can right-click a link and then just copy the email address and you have it. But clicking the link does take you to the default email client. Interestingly, there's other little things that we can put here like telephone numbers and SMS for text messages, but we'll call that more of an advanced feature right now. Right now, just get this link in there. Finally, the last thing that we're going to add here is what we call a back to top link. And this is really kind of a weird one because we are basically going to use a pound sign here and then use the keyword top. And what that does is it automatically will transport us when clicking this link to go to the top of the page. Now, I don't know if you guys are picking up on this, but when I put this stuff in the browser, everything's ending up on the same line, even though I have it on separate lines here. So that brings me to the other tag I want to talk about, which is the line break tag that I have the empty space. I guess I don't have line break tag in here. No, I do. It's right up here at the top. So that's the other tag that I'm talking about. And so what I'm going to do here is to force these to go to a different line, I'm going to type the line break tag. Now, I want you to notice a couple things about it. The line break tag does not have a closing element. I mean, and I think technically you can try to do it, but I don't think it's going to work. In the old-fashioned days when we were doing XHTML, we would do our line breaks like this, where we'd throw in a backslash with the tag to close it. So it's once in a while you encounter these out in the wild. And usually when you're working on an XHTML page, which is the old standard before HTML5. So this here will add a line break between each one of these lines. And what I'm going to do here is drop these in, save the document. Let's go back and do a refresh. And you'll see what I mean. So watch the bottom of the page here. Here's the refresh. And now you see how they're all on their own separate line. However, right, they're on their own line now, but they're kind of scrunched together. So sometimes when you do line breaks like this, you find yourself using a couple of them to basically just add a little extra space between items on the screen. And what you guys will learn is adding extra space to the screen makes stuff more readable, basically easier to read. It's easier on the eyes and to find stuff. All right, so we have the email link now, and now we have the go to top. So I'm going to demonstrate what that does. It's pretty intuitive. Takes you to the top of the page. What's kind of interesting about this feature, whenever you see this pound sign, it indicates that we're linking to something that has an ID on the page. There's a built-in ID on the page at the very top that we can't see or access called top, which is why this works. Later on, what we'll learn is that we can also use this type of anchor tag, basically, and we'll call it an in-page anchor that takes you to a different spot on the same web page. That's kind of the goal with that. All right, that completes all the tags that we need to do. The next thing that we're going to focus on is using the W3 validator, which I have linked up here at the top of the unit folder. So there's a link directly to it, and this is a good one to bookmark if you're into that kind of thing. So I'm going to just transport us there, and we end up at W3 schools on their validator page. Now, this is really kind of an interesting tool because you can validate your HTML code in three different ways. The one way is if it's already on a server, you can give it the address and it'll check it. Right? Remember, the code is readable from anywhere on the web. You can also take the file and upload it, or my typically preferred approach is, you know what, I got my IDE open here. I'm just going to do a Control A to select everything, a Control C to copy everything. On a Mac, it's Command A, Command C. And then I'm going to go back to the validator tool here and just paste in my code. Then I'm going to run a check. Now, I'm not saying my code is perfect. I'm hoping it is, but it might not be. Let's find out. So what this will do is it reads through the code line by line, top to bottom, and make sure that I'm following the correct web standards. And if I'm not, it's going to give me a readout of what is wrong and see how many errors or warnings I have for this page. So if I scroll down here, you're going to notice that no errors or warnings. Not like, I guess you would hope that your teacher doesn't mess something up, but I'm going to intentionally go ahead and make like 2 mistakes. And then I want to show you what happens to the code when there are errors and then the approach for fixing it, more importantly. So let's go back to the editor, and I'm going to make some intentionally bad maneuvers here. Right, so here's one. I'm going to take the closing tag from the H1 here, and I'm going to remove the closing bracket. You notice what happened in the IDE? The line below turned red, indicating that there's a problem there or somewhere above. I'm also going to, let's just make it really simple. Get rid of, let's say, this closing double quote here. Once again, we're highlighting red. And I'm going to save the document. Now, here's what the interesting thing is if I go back to the browser and look at the page, at least in this basic format, it didn't change a lot, but the image is gone because I messed up the image tag, right? And the rest of it kind of looks the same, right? So even though the code is broken, it still renders as best as it can. You know, it's really kind of the rule of thumb here. Once again, I'm going to come back to the code engine here, Control A to select all, Control C to copy. Back over to the validator, wherever that is. I'm just going to type it in. So I'm going to paste that code in and check it. And now it will throw error messages, right? So if I scroll down here, I want you to notice, you guys know that I made 2 mistakes intentionally, but I want you to notice how many it's identifying now. It's identifying a whole bunch of them, like 10 of them, and that's not correct. So the first thing that you do whenever you're fixing an error is never, ever start fixing them from the bottom up, because the bottom ones are broken because the first ones are broken, if you're catching my drift. So you always work top down. So the error message says, saw an opening bracket, right? Probable cause is missing a closing bracket immediately before, and they kind of identify the spot at line 9, column 9. So if I go in here and go line 9, okay, that's one line past it, and it says column 9. So it looks here, and basically what it's seeing is this, and going, wait, you never closed that. So there's a little bit in like reading it, but normally your IDE should highlight red, so you should know to fix it anyhow. So I can fix that. So there's the fix. Now, of course, I can fix it in this window up here too if I want to validate it. Then let's go to the next message, right? At line 9, column 12 had attributes. And so they're really pointing to the same spot over and over again. So they're pointing that same spot over and over again. If you come down to line 14 now, though, they're also seeing that there's no space between attributes. In other words, they don't want me to include my alt tag with my image tag because it's missing the double quote right here. So let's go ahead and fix that because we know where the error is. It, of course, is a little bit more challenging when you don't know exactly what the error is, but at least you have a spot where you can start to look. That's kind of the tip. When you use a better IDE like this one, it will highlight in color very close to where the error is. And that is really helpful for finding the problem. So go ahead and fix it. The red mark goes away and we're all good. All right, so folks, you got a little bit of a primer on how to complete the work, um, the tags that we didn't talk about, how to do the validation. The last piece that I'm going to do is I'm going to just demonstrate very quickly how to submit your work for a grade. For this first unit, we are only going to require you to zip your files and upload them. And if you want to practice the FTP thing, go ahead, but that's going to be more of a focus starting next week. So here are my Unit 2 files in my folder window right in front of me. I'm going to highlight all the files that I used to create this. Then I'm going to right click and compress to a zip file. And I kindly ask, please don't use 7-zip or tar or rar or any of those other ones. Please just use zip because Brightspace likes that better. And then I will receive the files, unzip them, check your code, and give you a grade. If you are ambitious and you want to upload this to the server, I'll show you really quickly how to do that. But basically, this zip file that you create here is the one that you would submit to the homework. And of course, to submit homework, if you guys are brand new to this, you basically go to Brightspace, and I guess I got to navigate my way all the way in there. Go to the assignment, way down there, click the title, and then attach the file and submit from here. And I think I demonstrated that a little bit in class too. I'm in instructor mode right now, so it doesn't really give me the submission. So I would have to do this to. Here's the assignment, so you click it, and then down here where you submit a file, you can click the upload button and find your file, or my favorite approach is just to take the zip file, drag it in and drop it into the box. And notice how, like when you drag it, it highlights, and when you let go, it will attach. If you want to also go ahead and upload to the server, I'm just going to do a super quick little demo on that. You go ahead and connect to Prometheus the way that we have described. And I just want to reiterate, we're going to review this, so don't freak out that you're not doing it right now. But if you can connect to your account, you should. And let's just see if I can remember my password, because I always have that issue. And that's not the right one. So now I'm into my account. All my work goes into this one folder here. And what I remember, I've suggested to everybody that what you really should be doing at this point is putting your stuff in folders, and then you can start moving entire folder structures over. And you're also noticing here that I'm hitting my Google Drive to get to some of this stuff, which is kind of weird too. And I have my stuff in very specific places, as you guys know. But what I'm going to do here is, you notice how I have web programming folders for all the different semesters. And I'm going to move my Web 25 folder over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the root of my account here, find that folder in this spot, and then in a blank part of the screen, not on top of a folder, but on top of files is fine, or a blank area, you can pull the folder over, and it'll move the whole structure over, if that's how you want to do it. Now, I did that on purpose because I want that folder there. And then I can just make sure it's there. I can go into Unit 2, and there's all my stuff, including the zip file. I really don't like zip files up on the server, but there it is, not a big deal. But now my pages are there, and now I have to hit this in the web browser. Here's a little tip. You can take this little folder path and copy it, provided you're in the right spot, so be mindful of that. Go to your web browser, hit Prometheus, append to it your username. So for me, it's all C's. And then I can paste in the folder. Now, I want you to be mindful, I got 2 forward slashes here, so I got to get rid of one of them. And then if I named my home page index.html all lowercase, it will automatically load like it did. So if you can load it up on the server like that, copy the URL, and then in the assignment, you can share the link. For right now, I want you to include the zip and the link, right? Well, the link isn't required right now, that'll be forward. In the future, I still suggest that you always submit both, because if the link doesn't work, at least I have a zip to grade. Also, the zip becomes a backup. So if like you lose all your files, I have them. So just keep that all in mind. When you're all done, hit submit and you're all set. All right, this video ends here, folks. Thank you for watching.